Let's go to the next slide and introducing Rear Admiral Jason Armstrong. Many of you have known Jason. His bio was on the internet if you cared to have a look at it. He's obviously got many years in the RCN. He's been involved with a number of force development portfolios over the years. He's a very strong Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I'm not going to hold that against him, but I'm certainly looking forward to his comments tonight. So we're going to do, as I said, a fireside chat, and he's going to share some details on his new appointment and give us the rundown on some of the other Crown projects and activities that are ongoing within the RCN. So, Admiral, if you're ready, perhaps you can open with a few comments on your new organization, its mandate, and how it's fitting into the RCN structure.
Hey, listen, good evening, Tim. Good evening to the NAC, and it's a real honor and a privilege to be here this evening with you. Um, I must admit, I really prefer to do these things live because then I get to see your body language and smiles or grimaces or the eye roll. Speaking more about Jeff Hamilton here, but it is what it is, and I'm really pleased to have so many numbers. Seems that defense procurement's a hot topic, and for those that did force development in their naval careers or have been tracking this for, throughout their careers and in retirement. There's a real different sense, I would say now, in the last 6 months. What I would like to do is, like Tim said, we'll go through a bunch of questions, a Q&A at the end. Chatham House rules non-trivial to say the amazing speaker you had on Monday evenings. That would be good enough. And the other thing I'll say, Tim, is that my Toronto Maple Leaf dedication when they hit rock bottom this morning was kind of put into question, but I think we'll be all right. And the last thing I'll say is, we've just finished Naval Board today, so those of you recall the Admiral with his senior leadership, command chiefs, directors and such. But his opening comments were really focused on the geopolitical situation right now. What's going on in the Indo-Pacific, what's going on in Europe and NATO, the ongoing aggression by Russia. This peace deal that the U.S. is looking at, and then our relationship with the Americans, which have really changed significantly over the last, again, 6 to 12 months. So I'm looking forward to this evening. And Tim, I think your first question about the new org structure. So what Admiral's Council decided back in 2024 was that they had a force employment 2-star on the East Coast, or Admiral Kurtz. They had a force generation 2-star on the West Coast. At the time, Admiral Robinson, now Admiral Patchell. And then the force development 2-star, which was Director General of Future Ship Capability, was kind of split between that and DGNFD. And so what the determination was to roll it all under one roof. And so that was decided before last summer. What we've done, so what it basically looks like is Chief of Naval Capability, one Commodore, Director General Naval Force Development for the traditional roles they held. We're creating a new position for it to be filled and named, which will be the one over the major Crown projects, the three ship builds that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then the third director was infrastructure. So that's the Director of Training Infrastructure Requirement, led by an EX1 civilian. What we've managed to accomplish since my assuming this role in the summer was the submarine project under Director Naval Major Crown Projects, submarines under Captain Byrne was created. That infrastructure piece is pulled out from DGNFD. We're still working on the Commodore position, and we're kind of trying to streamline, as is the Government of Canada and the rest of the department, about force development. So I've seen a lot of uptake in infrastructure. We're moving the 3 ship builds along really well, specifically the submarine, which we'll talk about later. But I still think we have a ways to go, and that's the quick summary.
All right, thanks very much, Admiral, for the introduction. Sounds like a lot happening, a lot of things happening at a pretty rapid pace, including the Coast Guard coming in under defense. So, how is that being managed from your perspective in terms of how does the fit look, and will has your organization been tasked to look at the Coast Guard's future requirements from a requirements perspective, or will that remain part of the Coast Guard Commissioner's partship?
Yeah, great question, Tim. So first and foremost, the Canadian Coast Guard coming back under or coming under Department of Defense is coming home, and we and the Navy and the white shirt community welcome them with open arms. And so it's great to be working with them again. There's so many of our numbers that were in the RCN that are over with the Coast Guard, so it's been great. Um, the rest of the CAF was a bit of a um, not a shock or a difference, but they were wondering how this would all work. For the Navy, it was business as usual. So there's a biannual meeting between the Commissioner of the Coast Guard, the head of the Navy. Uh, we host a quarterly infrastructure meeting and have done so since I was Director General of Naval Force Development the last 4.5. And we've also worked between Director of Naval Requirements and the Coast Guard equivalent about, uniforms, boats, cranes, those kind of things, comms that were part and parcel to supporting each other before the amalgamation. And what we're doing now is DNR and the Coast Guard requirements people are meeting to go, okay, what can we do to augment Coast Guard capability in the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance? So Coast Guard won't be war fighters or gunfighters out on the high seas or the defense of Canada, but they will contribute more meaningfully to the ISR picture. And so for that, we're really looking forward to it. And I'll talk a bit about some of the minor cap that we're doing. So really comms, sensors, and the ability to add to the surveillance picture in the defense of Canada.
Hey, I'm really pleased to hear that because that's exactly what we stated as a group before a parliamentary committee a few weeks ago. I wasn't available to attend the session, but Adam Lajeunesse attended on behalf of NAC, and that was part of the message that we wanted to pass. So that's great to hear. Um, Moving on to some of the other activities that are ongoing, looking at the Navy's major projects, i.e., Joint Support Ship, AOPS, now well into delivering the last couple ships, and River class destroyer. Can you give us a sense of what major milestones we might see in 2026 in those projects?
Yeah, sure, Tim. Thanks. So going to order, yeah. So joint support ship, C-SPAN, building the first class is always hard. And so those that are on the call, when we took Halifax class, for example, right, and recall that Halifax is actually Vancouver and Vancouver's Halifax because there's when you're building the first of it, it's challenging. But the Irving got better at it, and we got better at accepting them and operating them. So JSS 1 is probably a bit delayed, but JSS 2 is well ahead of what the timeline for JSS 1. And so C-SPAN is, learning as going. And I got to tell you that ship just toured the Berlin this summer in Halifax. What a phenomenal capability that will provide to the Royal Canadian Navy, our NATO partners and our NATO allies and our Indo-Pacific partners. So we're really looking forward to that. But the requirement for the Navy is 5. So again, those that were in before know that it's 5 joint support ships because we need to put one in maintenance, at times, and we want to have, up to 2 per coast, one to just, support the home fleet, one for an exercise, and the other one forward deployed. So the requirement is 5. We are looking at augmenting 1 and 2 and looking at 3 and 4. River class destroyer. Assess that will be, finalize the comprehensive design review either the end of the fiscal year or the beginning of the next fiscal year. So we're pretty close there. working really hard with Lockheed Martin, Irving, Canadian Mat, PSPC, ISAT, ourselves, the Navy, to get that done. I got to tell you, just into the job since mid-July. A lot of governance, a lot of great work with the Royal Navy and the Royal Australian Navy, and really welcoming the fact that Norway's purchasing the ship as well. And so now you have four allies that are going to have, the global combat ship. We're ready to, learn from each other, and also the build cycle. So that's great. They've worked on the first module, and I think that they want to finish 3 or 6. I'd have to go back and check, but the build will just continue to increase in the next year and the years to come. The rallying cry for everybody here, two things for you as NAC, and if you get a chance to write or talk to your colleagues out there, it's 15 river class destroyers. It's still the requirement for that combatant, and I know there's lots of chatter about fleet mix and what's in the realm, what's affordable, but the naval requirement is 15 combatants. The other one you'll hear is 9 by 2040, and it's really so that we can get out of the Halifax class and into the new class of ships. And the maintenance cycles on Halifax class is pretty phenomenal, to share with you. And so the sooner we can get out of that class, which has been our workhorse for over 3 decades, and then the new would be great. Harry DeWolf, the last, Irvin's completed the 6 AOPs for the RCN. They are an extremely capable platform. Max Bernays just finishing an Indo-Pacific deployment. Margaret Brooke down to Antarctica, circumnavigating South America. Great lakes deployment. 10,000 people in Thunder Bay came aboard the ship to tour and to learn more of the Navy. So that was really great. And what we're looking for, and I'll talk a bit about in the minor cap, Tim, is what else can we do to augment the capability for Harry DeWolf? Enhance the flight deck, containerized arrays, improving comms, secret skip, those kind of things, so that we can improve the operational capability of the Harry DeWolf.
Well, that's a good tour of the waterfront. You mentioned the number of 15, obviously, for the River class destroyers. There's also been some discussion, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but while we're on the subject of surface ships, there's also been discussion of the Continental Defense Corvette. Can you give me a sense of how things are coming along with it and what the numbers might look like for it?
Yeah. So thanks, Tim. Continental Defense Corvette. We think we started with the multi-mission Corvette. It's some Canadian multi-mission Corvette, and then we decided that we can't have Canadian in every one of our titles. So Continental Defense Corvette was settled upon. Looking at 8 to 20 right now. The teams is moving really rapidly with CDC. We had an industry day back in March that some of the members on the call would have attended. Brought in the Canadian shipyards and others, just having a conversation. We will likely do another industry day on the Continental Defense Corvette sometime February-ish, either late January, early March. But we're looking to do that. First and foremost, Continental Defense Corvette is not RCD. It's not that high-end warfighter. Where RCD will be able to defend itself and other ships around it, CDC will only be able to defend itself, and there's a distinction there. It'll be a lot lighter. We're looking anywhere from 2,500 tons to 4,000, which probably puts it up like a light frigate. And we have some work to do to better define it, but we're looking to minimize the crew size, enhance capability. There's been 3, those understand the high-level mandatory requirements. The Admiral's given me my marching orders, and really it's range. So it's got to be able to get up to the Arctic from either Halifax or Esquimalt. So really looking at about 7 days range, which also puts you to the Mediterranean, NATO partners, and Hawaii. The second piece is it's got to be able to be near ice. Can't be afraid of ice, so it can be near slush, being able to support Harry DeWolf, in certain seasons, obviously the summer. And the last one's lethality, and so it's not Kingston class. Kingston class was never a warship. This will be, a warship. Um, the Navy's recommendation is that this is part of the national shipbuilding strategy. It's built in Canada by Canadians, as much Canadian content as we can do, and really, showcasing what Canada do in all areas of warfare. So we're really excited about it. We anticipate, that there's a pull from the government of Canada, that we will hopefully enter, either modified of an existing platform or a completely Canadian design, but we're into definition, within about a year. So again, really excited about that.
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned the numbers, but I didn't quite catch them in terms of the number of Continental Defense corvettes that we're looking at acquiring.
Yeah, I said 8 to 20, and that's kind of that's a pretty broad spectrum for everybody on the call, and they understand that. Um, you know, you start off with that fleet of 15 River class destroyers, 5 JSS, 12 submarines, up to 20 Continental Defense corvettes, doing the missions we need in the six Harry DeWolf plus whatever Coast Guard has. So one, it's supporting the national shipbuilding strategy and keeping Canadian yards busy. And two, we all know that we have the longest coastline in the world, being able to be out there surveilling it and then take action as required. So again, we're still in OA, options analysis, but the starting number is, 8 to 20, and we'll see where we end up based on what the requirements line up for each individual platform.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the build, this is a question that relates to the national shipbuilding strategy. Would this class of ship be handed off to the combatant builder, or would the NSS be amended to the extent that other shipyards could quote get in on the action, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, Tim, I would suggest that, NSS has been with us since 2010. We're starting to bear fruit. Irving, listen to Admiral Topsy speak and it's true. Like, um, the only shipyard outside of, North America, outside of the U.S. that can do Aegis builds. It's a top shipyard, likely in North America for what they can do in their workforce and their management of such. Um, C-SPAN is starting to deliver Coast Guard and Joint Support Ship, and Davy is doing refits on Toronto and Montreal right now. So Mr. Hamilton's old ship, and they've also got Harry DeWolf. It's probably time for an NSS scrub. So yes, Irving has the combatants, but it's where this falls out, and it's probably time that had a look at that and being able to keep our yards busy and that expertise in Canada. So I don't really know much more than that, but I would suggest that we're probably in that discussion time frame.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you that it's time for an NSS refresh. That makes a lot of sense. Now, just going back a little bit to an earlier comment about 4 or 5 AORs, that makes perfect sense. Totally agree with that. But again, would it be uh, Berlin class? Would you be willing to entertain another asterisk until there are more Berlin class built, for example? Or how do you get to 5, I guess is my question.
Yeah, if I was king for the day, if I was head of the Navy, I think that, just understanding that the requirement, and so many of us have deployed with the Navy in our careers, and the advantage of having that replenishment ship with you or nearby. When you deploy the Indo-Pacific, they're big gaps in that coverage, and so the Americans would like us to have more fueling capability. I know our Indo-Pacific partners, the Korean, Japanese, similar request. Same with the Australians, and so having more would be better. It would be the Berlin class per se. Again, phenomenal capability. I don't know, but having the refueling piece is also an advantage. So, would it be JSS as is 3 and 4? I'm not 100% sure. We'll get some work to do in DNR and with the director, Naval Major Crown Projects, non-combatants. But we'll probably be able to give you an update, during the outlooks or into the summer. But definitely having that capability up to 5 is required.
Okay, thanks for that. Makes sense, as I said. We were, I don't like to use the word lobbying, but we were advocating for numbers in that range when we wrote our paper in extremis in 2024. So moving back to something that we were thinking of touching on, but I kind of switched gears on you a little bit. Talk now about the submarine project. Um, I'm aware that Canada's formally issued a bidding instruction to the two companies who were down selected, and this was reported by the CBC not that long ago. The document apparently went to ThyssenKrupp of Germany and Hanwha of South Korea. Can you elaborate on the process now that the Canadian Patrol Submarine project is undergoing and how this comes together? A little bit different than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, so when I became Director General Naval Force Development in 20, from Admiral Robinson at the time, they just announced in the outlooks to stand up the Canadian Patrol Submarine Project. And I've been here ever since. And in my time in force development, which is 11, I've never seen a project move so quickly. And that's for, many reasons. One is, there's a definite pull from, the government to move this to the geopolitical situation right now, right? For submarines and those on the call, and if you talk to Norm Jolan, Submarine Life Extension, the requirement at the end of O boats was 6, but the UK only had 4, right? And so now we have 3 oceans that are to patrol and accessible, so much greater piece for that. The integrated project team led by Captain Martin Byrne and Commander Ashley Hunt, the ADMAT engineer, but they've worked across with PSPC, ISED, GAC, Department of Finance to make sure that they all are well aware of what the Navy's doing and what the requirements are for the submarine. And then even internally for D&D, engaging with each of the L1s and the ADMs to go, hey, this is what the submarine will bring for Canada. So it's really moved rapidly. The Prime Minister, as you know, down selects from the 5 to 2, makes an announcement in August, and that there will be, the next process. So those 2 nations and those 2 builders are informed. And just to clarify with TKMS, it's Germany, Norway, right? It's those 2 nations that are building the 212 Charlie Delta together. And then the Koreans with Hanwha Ocean and Hyundai Heavy Industry. So they have 2 shipyards that will be participating in that program. Murray Brewster's article, does indicate that we're doing things differently for procurement. So there was not an RFP released. You recall that there was an RFI last year, but this is not an RFP. There's a down select for 2. And now both nations, both OEMs, have been provided with a list of questions they must respond to, a weighting criteria, and then they need to get back. So we went in October to see both yards. So myself and the integrated project team. So I said PSPC GAC. Internally for us was ADMIE, so infrastructure, the Navy and material group. And so we briefed each of the countries and nations on the process. and that the qualification process was going to come out in mid-November, which it did. We will go back in February just to touch base and get a rough brief from what they're saying, where they think they need to go. Right now, the dialogue is open between the OEMs and PSPC, I said, and the companies. We need a rough drafts or pretty final drafts in sometime in March, and then final submission in April. And so once we have those, there'll be a march to Treasury Board submissions and a decision made at the end of that. The goal from the RCN's perspective, and again, moving very rapidly, is that they're down select to 2-1 in 2026, commence contract negotiations with the one company, and then have that locked down by 2027. And then that's the case. Both of those programs are in build, and then it's a negotiation about which submarine we're taking off the line.
Okay, that's pretty comprehensive. So this document, in effect, is what they're using for guidance in terms of all the questions they have to answer. And I'm assuming there's some kind of weighting to looking at it, just as there would be for an RFP evaluation. And then there's a decision made, and as you say, Treasury Board, and things really start to move. So that's all good. It's kind of into 2027 by then. Is that still going to enable the RCN to decommission or start decommissioning the Victoria class by 2035-ish?
Again, Tim, like 2035 is no later than date, right?
Okay.
And as I said earlier, and you're going to talk to Admiral Topsy, like those are two hot production lines. And so the goal for the Navy would be to, depend on the winning bidders, to take one of those off a production line. And the sooner, we can get out of the old submarine business and the new one, the better off for us. But we will keep the Victoria class going until, we have a critical mass of new Canadian patrol submarines, and then transition to that platform. Again, those are on the call that, served in the Navy when I was a bit younger and before, like, understand what we lost going from Oberon class to the Victoria class, the upholders. We actually don't get them until 1998. And so we don't have the opportunity earners. They lose ability to maintain them. We don't, our yards can't maintain. We're having difficulty operating them, and we do a host of other things with the platform. And the goal of the Navy this time is to not have a gap in submarine capability. And so we're very cognizant of that requirement to keep the class going and keep the operational boat going for not only force employment, but also force generation activity.
Okay. Again, let's change gears and maybe talk about smaller capital projects for a while. There were quite a few on the books over the last few years. Some of them moved, some of them didn't. Now that D&D's got significantly more funding to make things happen, are they starting to move as well?
Yeah, so what the Navy's done over in conjunction with AD over, since I was DNR, was a ranking board for all the minor cap projects, right? Because we didn't have enough financial resources or human resources to move all of that program. And at the time, the minor cap was, capped at 15 million. And the max could be 10 million per minor. But now that the ceiling's increased to 25 million, and we have additional funds, as you indicated, to move that minor capital program. The issue we're struggling with, Tim, is human resources, and it's so how many project directors we have in the Navy to move, the big projects, but also these minor ones, and then also the resources in ADM and PSPC, PSPC to, do the contract and all the rest. So we are we're going to spend more this year in the minor cap space than we ever had before. Um, is it everything that we want to? No, and it's just really more of a challenge of, like I said, HR resources this time. But we're pretty excited about the capability that we can get to, the sailors, the war fighters within 3 to 5 years. And so um, I've always pushed the team to maximize their capability, like to spend in that domain. We've been pretty successful, and so, and like I said, we'll spend more here. Um, you know, will I ever spend enough? Make me happy? Probably not. But we still strive for that.
Well, that's a good segue. You mentioned HR as being a bit of a limiting factor when it comes to running a large number of smaller projects. It's always a challenge. Talking about HR, uh, the Naval Experience program seems to have achieved a lot of success. Earlier this year, it was reported that recruiting applications and enrollments have exceeded expectations. One would assume then that it'll keep on running. You mentioned it, Deep Blue. In any event, can you give me an update on the status of the NEP retention rates and any potential adjustments that may be necessary?
Yeah, thanks. And good reminder to sometimes watch what I say. And, I know you're recording this and you'll get a transcript out. And for those members of NAC, like, um, you're under the tent right now. And so I'm probably sharing more than I would otherwise. But just to go with personnel and NEP, it was the cap was set at 325 last year, right? And talked about the CMP, um, and they got that number. And so, you know, of the 325, sorry, 277 positions, I got the stats here, were filled. 50% of those are enrolled in the Reg Force, the Navy. 25% in the Reserve Force, and the bulk of the rest either went to the Army, the Air Force, or just released. There was very few that released because if they wanted to, do the buy and try, for lack of a better term, in the Navy or a path to something else, they were pretty interested in a military career. And so this year, CMP upped the SIP to the strategic intake plan to 425, so an increase of 100. And we're on track again to meet that number. And so it's going really well. Um, the other things we need to do is attrition and retention, and so lots of programs internally for the CAF D&D to do that. The recent pay increase has helped, stretch out some of the people that were thinking about releasing earlier. And they said, no, I'm gonna stay in for that 13 or 20% pay raise for whatever they got. Um, and the Admiral again, privy to be at Naval Board today. Lots of great discussion about what we're doing for recruiting, what we're doing for retention, what we're doing to entice sailors. And again, I'll share with you, and Joanna Davies and others are on the call that are in the marine industry know that we're all fighting for a limited resource, right? Like, Coast Guard struggling to fill the numbers. The marine industries, like those that operate tugs or go out to service oil rigs, or the merchant navy, are struggling. Even the defense industry and the maritime environment. So we need to attract really good people and get them there. And if they don't want to join the Navy, then maybe they want a career in the Coast Guard, or they want a career in the maritime defense industry. So we want to be able to do that. I'll give you a quick stat. Margaret Brooke was in Thunder Bay for the start of the Great Lakes deployment. Had 10,000 people on board. When they'd previously been, a couple years in advance of that, it was like 500 to 1,000. So numbers are really impressive, and that whole deployment was targeted at marine engineers, cooks, and a couple of other specialty trades. So, we left a briefing today, like, yeah, we still have some work to do. Like, we can't take our eye off the ball. But we see that we may be bottoming out and then able to start to regain. So we're getting back to the NEP. Really, really great times. And for those on the call, I think we at 50, 60. Can't see the number, Tim. But if you all
47.
27, if you all reached out to somebody you know and said, hey, like trying to figure out what you're going to do after high school or after university or college, a 1 year sign up gig's not too bad. In fact, I've got two of my cousins already enrolled, so we'll see if you guys can match that.
Yeah. Um, Certainly interesting times when it comes to all the opportunities out there for long-term careers. I just was down at RMC last week talking to the naval cadets, trying to get them fired up, and they're certainly interested in what's going on. I want to, because we've got quite a few questions coming in the chat area, I'm going to switch to that now, Admiral, and we'll pull a few questions from that, and they're kind of off the cuff. And then I've got one final question before we kind of wrap things up tonight. But from the chat area, Barry Walker comments about the Globe and Mail report, which I think I read was based on an interview with Admiral Topshee, talking about patrol craft, orca or equivalents in the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence. And Barry says when he suggested that idea about 15 years ago, he was told it was, quote, a stupid idea. So he asks, what's happened over the intervening years to change his idea into something that could actually happen?
Well, for Barry, like I think what happened is we took his idea and then we just put it aside, and then 15 years later we found it. Went, geez, this is brilliant, and so we better share it. So actually, if he was still in, we'd give him a great, outstanding par. Um, those that were sailing the old Yags, and when Orca came in, and we just saw that leap in capability what Orca provided, right? It was 24 and 5 on the West Coast, and there were participants, active participants in coastal defense during the Olympics. Great capability. But they've been run hard over the last 20 years. I can't believe it's 20 years in time to replace them. And so we're looking at options, an Orca Plus. So like we did for the Olympics, have secure comms, confidential books, that kind of ability, and a weapon on the forecastle, so 50 cal or 20 millimeters, something like that. Um, and there's really lots of options to do it, throughout Canada, through the NSS yards or others like Ontario shipyards or in Quebec. So we're pretty excited about it. The other piece, though, is that, and again, we all know that Canada suffers from maritime blindness. And so the Admiral wants to put uh, orcas and the training vessels of the NRDs in the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway. And he wants them, it's Coast Guard bases and stations throughout the Seaway and the Great Lakes. And, it's showing Canadians that their Navy's here and it's patrolling. And there's, we all think that the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway is a secure waterway, and it is in a lot of ways, but there's still lots of illegal traffics and a lot of work for the MSOCs. And so, there's a role for those vessels in the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance piece to help secure our waters. So
So it sounds to me like it's not just a quote training role, it's an operational role as well.
yeah, I mean, what the percentage would be is primarily training and getting crews out and getting the Naval Reserve divisions out um, on the Great Lakes and on the east and west coast. But whenever we have a gray hull or a Coast Guard vessel, you're contributing to the maritime picture, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to skip down to another question in the chat. Uh, Ian Wood asks, what about the new Cove-based Defense Innovation Secure Hub, DISH, in Halifax? How will it help the RCN's fleet build?
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't been to the Cove offices, although I almost got there in DefSec this year. But I've had the organizers out to Ottawa and had a conversation with them. I've had the Admiral out. Lots of great work ongoing between DRDC, Atlantic, Cove, the small startup companies, the small innovative companies, and really trying to bring that capability into the RCN. So we don't want to buy massive things that take 10 to 15 years to get through the procurement model. What we're looking at is, 1 to 2 years, three tops that we can, leverage that expertise through cold, NATO, Diana, DRDC, and then bring it onto the frigates, bring it onto AOPS, Orca replacement, and then test and trial it and see if it works. And as we're learning, and you're all reading the paper about what's going on in Ukraine, like the battle space is changing so rapidly, so quickly, and so we can't afford to do these innovative projects over 10 years. We need to do it fast, and so we want to leverage that expertise as cool. The other one we want to do is be able to fund these innovative things, and so still working that piece through, but DRDC seems to be able to um, they've had an inject of funding through the NATO 2%. So I'm really optimistic about our ability to leverage coal and others like it so we can bring innovative things into the RCN quickly.
Okay. We talked about minor crown projects. This one relates somewhat to that. Rick Hatton asks, where do sea drones fit into the range of capabilities that the RCN's looking at across the board?
Yeah, I think we can all agree that you're not going to go to sea or do anything right now without uncrewed systems augmenting your capability, right? So the dull, dirty, the dangerous. Um, so the Navy's working with companies like Kraken Robotics, like Cellular on the West Coast, others to put sensors on the water for mine hunting, mine avoidance, mine detection, mine demolition. We also wanted to look for uncrewed underwater systems to augment our submarine capability. We want to use it when we go up to the Arctic for sounding and all the rest, and to augment our sensors there. RCNI Star for bringing UAVs back to frigates, because those are recall Scan Eagle. We had uncrewed systems on board our frigates during the in the Persian Gulf during Opal. So we want to do more on that, and we're trying to experiment with the Coast Guard and Transport Canada to bring, what other maritime drones can we do? Like, we're going to have a project about using it to support replenishment at sea. So instead of a heavy jack stay, we use a drone to pick up the cargo and move it over between the frigate or the destroyer and the joint support ship. And then those that recall the naval exercise back in June, demonstrated like bringing an uncrewed surface vessel onto another one and destroying both. And so really trying to move the yardstick. So we can't go to sea right now without uncrewed systems, and we're exploring those options and trying to get smarter and quicker and faster. And so again, it goes back to that we want to procure a few systems and then get them and augment them. And we're using drones in a lot of our deployments right now, like pulling off the Kingston class. But a great question, thanks.
Excellent. So I'm going to consolidate a couple of comments, observations into one question. Gord Forbes has asked a couple of pointed questions about, quote, where are the people going to come from? And I think Phil Dana says it quite well. He says, with RCN fleet recapitalization well underway, does the current and future likely gaps in personnel present material impacts to the anticipated deployments of each class of the future ships? And Gord said something similar, like, in other words, you're going to have a number of ships being built over the next 20 years. Where are the people going to come from to manage all of these projects and build all of these ships? Is that something that's a worry at all?
Yeah, as I said, I was privy to be part of Naval Board today, and so a big bulk of the forenoon. So the forenoon was focused on personnel, um, recovery, and then the other one is infrastructure. And again, infrastructure is mine. But the personnel piece, and the data was showed kind of where we've been over the course and what had happened, and but it's showing like we're leveling off, and now like the 425 for NEP the increased in focus by CMP in recruiting for naval trade, especially the distressed ones, we're going to start to see that recovery. And we'll productions, turning from yellow to green. Still concerned about Martex, but again, that focused recruiting drive for Margaret Brook and the Great Lakes, and we're starting to see a positive trend in numbers. So we still have a ways to go. But then when I was talking to the admiral at the end of the day, and he goes, "No, he's in a much more positive space than was when he took command a number of years ago." And so, like I said, it's not easy, and we're not out of the woods yet. But the Navy's going okay. We can see that we'll be okay, and we'll get those numbers up.
Okay, well, we're coming up to 2000, so there's a couple more in the chat area that I'll pick up on. This one's from Admiral John Anderson. He says, could the Admiral give us a feel for what level of support the RCN is ensuring goes to the research community?
Yeah, so like I indicated, DRDC received a large injection of funding this year for um, defense research and bringing advancing capability. Um, those that have sailed on the East Coast, those have had done any work with DRDC Atlantic, know how tight that community is, and that's really, kind of where the success Canada had is in uh, underwater acoustics and sonar development is because of that collaboration unofficially, I'd argue, between DRDC, the Navy, and industry on the East Coast. And so, best practice, I think that's what Cole's trying to do. That's what some of the other programs are doing is try to get those organizations into a room and have more discussion. I would argue that they were doing a pretty good job before, and now it's just being formalized. Um, so I think that we're going to continue to see that development. Um, share with you, DRDC had a lot to do with the development of USU, which is the underwater warfare suite upgrade project that General Dynamics is installing the ships. So build the Quebec sail with it. Ottawa's the next one on the west coast, and so the lot of great capability with that system. Um, Maps and traps that the DRDC worked on for the Navy. We wouldn't sail without it. So lots of great stuff. And again, as was mentioned, Cove, NATO Diana, and so I'm seeing a real positive trend in operationalizing some of the great work that DRDC is doing with defense industry.
Okay, I've done a quick scan of what's in the chat, and I think most of your previous answers have pretty much covered all of the odds and sods questions that I haven't addressed specifically. So I'm going to move to just a couple of wrap-up questions, and one perhaps that I could have asked earlier when we were talking about the River class destroyers. What's the status of the HMCS Assiniboine in Eastern Passage? And you can kind of explain what it is for the, off the top of my head, I'm having a challenge coming up with the right words to describe it.
HMC is a symbol, like I'm a
Sorry,
sorry.
it's the River class
That's what
combat system ashore.
the land-based
Yeah,
test facility.
that's it. Yeah, the land-based test facility. Sorry.
I was thinking that I was trying to picture the old Assiniboine and what you were. So understand. Yeah, the land-based test facility, and again, that's where we're going to be able to test and trial, Aegis, the Spy 7 radar, all of the combat systems for River class destroyer. Like the Royal Australian Navy has one, the Royal Navy has one, very successful one, and so it's really the first of class. It's the 16th ship. And from that, we're going to be able to really advance our capability and understanding of the River class destroyer. So, I would, some would argue that that is the first of class, but it really is the most important piece, and it's being built right now. If you play golf and you're out in the Eastern Passage, you can go see it. And if you don't play golf, you can take a drive out there and have a look. But it's moving along, and I can't remember the completion date, Tim, but it'll arrive before the first River class hits the water.
Well, obviously, the idea is to take that first combat system and prove that it works ashore before ship number one, I think it's Fraser, ever goes to sea. So yeah, having been a ship's company in HMCS Assiniboine, I'm kind of attached to it.
Yeah, right. Like I'll go back to, my ships, Annapolis, Saskatchewan, Yukon, Mackenzie, um, you know, I'm dating myself a bit, but isn't Fraser blue? Isn't that what we're also looking for?
You got me on that one. Anyway, my last question before we wrap things up, because people are starting to leave, I think, is where do you see yourself? Everything's moving so fast. Where do you see yourself a year from now, Admiral?
Um, so thanks, Tim. So those that would have been at the CADC Navy Outlooks back in April of this year, like I kind of stumbled a bit because we were wading through the process about uh, the GoFo plot. And I'd had a conversation with Admiral Topsy, and I'm sure a lot of had conversations throughout their careers with their bosses or the head of the Navy. And I was at 35 years served and time to look to move on. But I said I would stay for two jobs. The one was this one, Chief of Naval Capability, and the other one was Deputy Commander of the Navy. But I really didn't want to do that job because this is much more fun. Um, And so what it really came down to is that, and it's in the bio, like I've been doing FD work off and on since 2011. I've created pretty good network with defense industry, other government departments, those inside CAF, D&D. And I really saw the ability or the opportunity to leverage those skills and relationships to try to advance the Canadian Patrol Submarine project, to finalize the comprehensive design review for river class and start towards batch two, that it could help in some way the GSS 3 and 4 discussion. And then, with Common Defense Corvette and Orca, like, helping the team along, helping them develop their skills and those relationships. And so I didn't want to leave when I thought the job wasn't done yet. And it won't be when I leave. But I thought I could really help out. And so that's why I decided to stay. And my plan is to stay until the, APS 2027. And I really firmly believe that we can have, the contract signed by then for the Canadian Patrol Submarine Project, and then, ride off or sail off into the sunset. I think that would be my goal. So, a year and a half, goals in the call, you're stuck with me. But I'm really looking forward to trying to do that. Um, Tim, I don't know if I get a last word or whatever, but I'm happy to answer another couple of questions. But just had a couple of notes before I left.
Well, you certainly you can have the last word, but I always get a last word too. So I tell you what, why don't we switch, Alex, switch back to the slides, and we'll get into the last couple of words. But before I say that, Alex, go ahead and do that. I want to thank you, Jason, for taking the time to be with us tonight. You have, in fact, you moved the yardsticks significantly in your time in the force development world, significantly. And I think there's not one of us here tonight that wouldn't want to pat you on the back and say job well done, because it's really meant well, you've helped position the Navy to make things happen going forward, and we all know things are happening really quite fast. So you're one of the key guys that has facilitated that. And on behalf of all of us former Navy guys, I want to personally thank you for that. We got just a couple of concluding remarks. Alex, if you can, yeah, perfect. I just want to remind everyone that if you were here as a guest tonight, you can always join the organization. We will be having a Ottawa branch luncheon on the 17th of December. And Jason, I hope you're available for that. I know it's you're in town, but your schedule's pretty tight that day. And of course, we'll plan for another speakers evening in January of 2026. And on that note, I'll turn it back to you, Jason, for the last few words. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to really say thanks to everybody on this call. The like you all had the watch, I took the watch, I'm going to turn over the watch. And that's the way the Navy rolls, right? And so I just wanted to thank all of you on the call, mentorship and guidance and leadership over, the decades to get us here, and a lot of lessons learned, some painful. But this is all of our success. The story, like telling the story about the Navy and its importance of what we do, is really critical, and to fight that maritime blindness. And you don't get Christmas this year without keeping the sea lines of communication and trade going. And uh, last thing I'll say is just um, Tim, I'd love to be out on the 17th. I'll try, but it's been a great to talk and engage with everybody else. And listen, my, Tim had called me out and point out that my NAC membership had lapsed here, so I went online and I fixed it. And then you know what, you can do 2027 as well. So for $50 more, you can be right out till 1 January 2027. Listen, everybody, have a great evening. I'll try to make it out the 17th, and look forward to seeing you. So thanks again,
Hey,
Tim.
Jason, thanks very much for that. We appreciate you renewing your membership. We know we've got you for a couple more years. That's great, boy here. So anyway, that completes our evening tonight. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and look forward to the next one. And obviously, of course, seeing the Ottawa folks at the luncheon on the 17th. So cheers. Bye for now.